For those of us who don't focus on moving things around the world, just give us a quick overview of what your company is.
Okay. Well, in the broadest sense, we do supply chain management. But we do it instead of, it's kind of like doing it by outsourcing. So a lot of people have CPAs or accounting firms that they hire to do their accounting. Other people do it in-house. So we're the outsourced branch of a lot of companies for their supply chain. And generally it's not for their entire supply chain, although in some cases it is, but generally it's for certain parts of their supply chain. So if a manufacturer or a product brand has certain items they either can't make or don't want to make, then they'll outsource those to us. And we operate mostly overseas in China and Asia region. We have operations in China, Thailand, and Bangladesh. And we've been in a lot of different countries, from Malaysia to Vietnam, Philippines, Korea, Indonesia. So we just kind of move where the action is and where people need us to be. We were started in 1988. Local guy in Louisville was a buyer for a department store, Federated Department Stores, and he started the company, a guy named Earl Vondran, and he brought on 3 partners, me being one of them, in 1998. And at that time, I moved to China and began developing our systems and our staff in China. And that's really what has led a lot to our success, is because we early on established a presence and infrastructure. And probably the single most important thing we did was establish a operating system, a system of procedures and forms and processes that are consistent, so that no matter what we're making, whether it's some simple product, we used to make, for example, clothespins for a company in Seymour, Indiana. They used to be called Seymour Housewares, was one of our first customers. And we made hundreds and hundreds of millions of wood clothespins. Yeah, it's such a simple product, but when you really think about it and you dig into it, it's a lot more complicated than you might imagine, because there are different standards that they have to keep to be, even for a clothespin. So, you know, the wood that's used, you don't think about it, but there's a lot of woods that will stain when they're wet. The wood will bleed onto the fabric. So we had to establish tests of wood so that it wouldn't, they only use certain species of wood, and then we had to test to make sure that they did it. The little clip, the metal clip that's used on them will rust, especially in contact with water. So we had to have certain plating tests and salt corrosion tests and so forth. So that's an example of a simple product, and just kind of how we drill down into the very detailed parts of the product, and then on into more complicated products. We make, for example, some pretty high tolerance fittings for a computerized cutting machine, and those tolerances are within about a thousandth of an inch. But we use the same process, is my point, to specify and develop and define what it is the quality is supposed to be. So having done that, we currently, we ship somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20,000 containers of product every year from Asia. And we manage over 5,000 SKUs and ship somewhere around 500 million or 50 million units of product per year. So when you do this kind of volumes, one of the reasons we can do this kind of volumes is we have a consistent process that is the same no matter what kind of product we're making.
So that would probably be a big step in the direction of growing the company, establishing a culture of consistency, quality,
Yeah.
and expectations to meet the customer needs. Correct?
Exactly, yes. So it also has been, is helpful in training our staff, because 98% of our staff, their native language is not English, it's Chinese. And so, or in some cases other languages, but mostly it's Chinese. And their understanding of quality, they don't come from the same background we come from. So when we started going back to the clothespin test, they just couldn't fathom why we cared whether the wood was a certain species or not. It's a penny, 2 penny item. That's so there. Are there any? There's no Chinese here. Are there? No. Anybody speak Chinese here? Okay. Well, anyway, one of the first words that I learned in Chinese was "chabudo," and what it means is kind of very similar. But it's a very dangerous word, because what's similar to you and I is not similar to them. And for example, color. We were making a Christmas product. Everybody knows what color red should be for Christmas, right? That bright cherry red. But I went to the factory and they were making these Christmas ornaments in a kind of a burgundy color. And so I showed them, we have, there's a color standard, it's called the Pantone Matching System, PMS. And I showed them it's supposed to be number 285, I think it was. And I said, there it is. They looked at it, and here's burgundy, and here's cherry red. And they kept saying, "Chabudo, chabudo." Finally I learned, I said, what do they mean? What do they mean by that? They said, pretty close, it looks the same, but it wasn't. And so that's kind of an example of why this system is so important, because by using those defining the quality, and we were doing this when other people, I think, also didn't really recognize how important it was to define quality down to such a detailed level, even for a very simple product. So it not only helps in getting the customer's confidence, but it also helps in training the staff consistently so that they have a standard, they know step by step what to do, and they aren't just kind of winging it along the way.
So since you've been with the company since pretty much the beginning, what is the company culture for here in the United States, and how do you establish that culture and maintain that culture kind of as the company's changed?
We early on adopted kind of a hybrid culture. It's not totally Western. We didn't try to make the Asians Western, and we didn't try to make the Westerns Asian. We kind of took a little bit of both and put them together, and so we have, I would say, a hybrid culture.
How does that work as far as goal setting, feedback, getting your employees to go in the same direction if you're drawing from different aspects of American culture or Southeast Asian, or in the future maybe even Latin American or something like that? How do you manage that as an employer or a management team?
You know, it goes back to that basic process, I think. You know, you have to have a standard with which to measure. And the standard we set is for every single product, you follow these steps. And when you're talking about, you know, we divide a product into several different categories. So one is appearance, what's it supposed to look like? Another thing is the workmanship. What's important about the way it's made, and the construction of the product. One is the function, what's it supposed to do, how's it supposed to perform, and then what's the packaging like, how's it supposed to be packed for shipment, and then all through those, everyone knows that we train everybody that's what it's supposed to. That's how they're supposed to do it, and pretty soon they learn about it. And I think when you're dealing with a culture that is different than our own, that's even more important. It's important even if you're in one country, I think. But if you're dealing cross-culturally, it becomes even more important that you set objective, definable standards and leave little up to the imagination. And then, quite frankly, we also do we have kind of a trust but verify, to quote Ronald Reagan, if anybody remembers him. But trust but verify. So we let people trust them, we train them, let them do their job, but we also have a very intensive system of internal auditing, that we actually have auditors that go around and check your work. And it's not because we don't trust you, it's just because we have to do that for the comfort level, the satisfaction of our customers. Because we know, we've learned through the process that when we have a problem, because we do have problems, everybody has problems. That's what business is all about, is solving problems. And when we have a problem, it's generally because we either did not have a procedure to follow, or we had a procedure and somebody didn't follow it. When we have a procedure and it's followed, we seldom have problems. So maybe I got a little off the subject a little bit, but
no, I mean that makes sense, because with your company, feedback is yes, no, try it again, more or less. I mean, because it's going to meet the specification or it's not. We're going to be close enough but not quite, or you just didn't meet them. So to get that feedback constantly from third parties who are maybe not the management staff but an audit team, is kind of helpful to say this is correct or this isn't.
it does. It puts a little pressure on it. It's not we try to have an open culture, that we just let people do their jobs. We don't want to, we're looking over their shoulders, but you have to, frankly. I mean, it's good practice. It sounds a little big brotherish, or like you're restricting people, but frankly, I found in practice people appreciate it, and they also realize that when their fellow workers are not performing well, the whole company is at risk. And so if everybody is supposed to do it this way, that's what the way you're trained, everybody's trained the same way, no one is exempt, then it's a level playing field, a fair way to do it.
So how would you say you motivate your employees or suppliers or third-party individuals that you have to deal with as far as getting the right thing on time consistently for your customers. How do you do that in a general sense, then how do you do that maybe a little bit more specifically to get the results that you need as a management team?
You know, it works a little different with each supplier, but in general, we get it because people have recognized over the years that our system works. And so it's, early on, we had some pretty significant successes and took some very small suppliers, grew into very big, large suppliers because by partnering with us. And you know, you think China's the most populous country, but it's also a small place, and word spreads quickly. So people saw some people having success and said, "Wow, how are they growing so fast?" They said, "Well, they're working with Source, and you know, these guys are just anal about what they do." And so everybody started kind of getting on the bandwagon. So that's kind of the general way that we get success, but we measure it by performance. And so when we give someone an order, we have some pretty significant penalty clauses in it. That if you don't meet the timeline, if you don't meet the quality standard, if you substitute materials or subcontract without permission, and so we have a very tightly orchestrated program that everybody understands that you got to play by the rules. And again, especially over there, not everybody does play by the rules, and so they know if they break them, it's gonna cost them, and then. So, you know, that's the only way you can motivate people by making them feel good, but the best way is financially.
So how do you go about team building here locally in your U.S. home base? And does that extend at all to some of these suppliers or people that you're working with overseas? Do you worry about team building with it being so different cross-culturally?
Yeah, we, as I said, we have kind of this hybrid culture, and so we don't have that many people in the States. Most of our people are in Asia. And so and all but 3 people in our U.S. office travel frequently to China, to our office in China. So we encourage that. We encourage, and then that in Asia is really where we have the team building. And we encourage the suppliers to participate with us. So we have basically 3 main events in a year. We have a summer get together where we pull everybody together. We go to the beach or go mountain climbing or go whitewater rafting or some event like that, and we again have suppliers participate. We have then 2 other festivals that are popular in China: the Mid-Autumn Festival in October and the Lunar New Year Festival in usually in January, February. So we observe their customary holidays, and then organize activities that are more Western around those holidays. Get everybody to participate. Have our U.S. guys become really, it's like a big family, really, and so it's more of a family kind of gathering where everybody, you bring your kids, you bring your mother, you bring your whoever you want, and everybody just gets together, and that's how we just keep going.
So your employees in China or Asia in general, are they Americans, or are they chosen from your Chinese workforce to kind of manage the facilities or the product and production?
Say it again. I didn't catch.
Are your employees in Asia from America, or are you
No.
choosing people in those countries to lead those teams?
No, we very definitely, we have a few, mostly engineers in the U.S. side, who has told him to travel to China. But all of the, and we have one Western manager there, but everybody else, the managers all through to the people that are in the factories every day are Asian, China.
So with your organization being spread out, how is decision-making handled? Is that set by you as the management team, and then decisions are kind of broadcast out? Is there feedback taken into it? How do you guys decide to make organizational changes?
Well, we try to let decisions be made at the point where the activity's done, so in the factories. So we try to empower everybody. By having a system, they know what's expected of them, and we don't try to micromanage at all. We don't try to dictate, except that we dictate that you do follow the system. But as far as how you individually do that and how you execute it on a daily basis, that's your decision. And what we care about is that the results at the end of the day, that there's, we have a group of goals we set with our customers primarily. On-time shipments, product quality, defect rates, and so forth. And then we measure those, and we do too, we're very pragmatic about it. We even though we're a family, sometimes you gotta spank your babies, right? So it's not a popular thing sometimes. But we found it to be pretty effective, at least in that culture. So we reward success, and we recognize as well the people that aren't measuring up, and we move them on.
How would you describe your personal leadership style?
That's probably a question better asked to some of the guys that work with us. I think I've mellowed as I've gotten older. I was used to be quite aggressive and quite, aggressive is probably the right word. I think one thing I've learned is you can't do it all yourself. When I was younger, I wanted everything to be so perfect that sometimes I felt no one could do it as well as I could. And that was a weakness that I have tried to overcome. So at this point, I think my management style is a lot more kind of laissez-faire. Let it be, and let people make their own paths. And if they, as long as customers are happy and we're profitable and making money, I'm happy.
So some of the things that we've kind of talked about, we've touched on, but one thing I was curious about, since you are dealing with international partners and customers, how do you communicate effectively? Are you flying to China to have face-to-face meetings once a quarter? Are you primarily emails, conference calls, video chats? I mean, in this world, we have so many communication options, and it seems like we can always get to somebody. But how do you prefer to communicate across your supply chain?
You know, personally, you know, face-to-face communication, there's nothing that you can substitute for it, I don't think. But one of the other things we did about halfway through, you know, so it's been roughly eight years or so ago, we began development of a software for a web-based, browser-based database system. And so that's really our primary means of communication and our primary means of measurement of how we're doing. So everyone logs into the portal, inputs their data that they're responsible for, and then we can output management reports. And even though China's 12 hours ahead of us, so when I get up in the morning, I'll be able to see the inspections that were done yesterday, and if everybody did their job, if they put them in on time. And same with the customers, then the customers can log in and see that. So that's been a very key part of communication. But so yeah, I think the best way is to have several methods of communication. So we have this electronic, digital communication, if you will, through the web. We use systems like GoToMeeting and Skype, and so we're probably on conference calls. Most of our U.S. guys and China guys are on conference calls 2-3 times a week on those, and then supplement all that with face-to-face communications, kind of reinforcing it, getting a little bit of, because, you know, even though there's a business side to it, the other thing I think that is so important is to balance a little bit of social side to it. So like the team building events I mentioned, and going out, meeting the suppliers, having dinner with them, you know, just relaxing together, learning about each other's families, and all of that is key to effective communication. Not just one way. I think it's several different ones, and
All the above.
all the above. Yeah.
So, since your customers can also see some of the same database information and what kind of activity was going on, if you have a really poor performing day, a customer calls you up and it's like, what's going on? How do you handle that extra transparency? You know, a lot of companies, they kind of compartmentalize and keep things internal until they're ready, and then they get to the customer. If you have customer line of sight of some of these things,
It's a good question.
how do you manage that?
There's a downside to having transparency, and but I personally think it's good because the guy that started the company, Earl, told me once one of the most profound things I ever heard. He said, "Bad news never gets better with age." You know, if you got bad news, just get it out there, get over it, deal with it, and move on. Because things happen, and we need to deal with them. So I, always take it as an opportunity to how we can improve, because we do have another system. Anytime we have a formal customer complaint, we generate a corrective action and follow that through, so that in the worst case, we don't repeat the same mistake twice. We have mistakes, and they happen, and they're going to happen. And I think that's part of management too, is you have to allow people to make mistakes. You know, you got to let them learn. The easiest way to learn is to make a mistake. Then you remember it always, right?
Yeah.
And but
personal inspection with owners of factories? How do you make sure that Sources International isn't broadcast on CNN for having something blow up on your face?
Don't say that. Please. No, we do annual audits of the facilities, and we really rely on our customers to tell us how important that is to them. In some industries, industrial products, for example, it doesn't have a high level of visibility. People are less concerned about it. Whereas in consumer products, it's Nike and all this stuff is all over the place. But that's another kind of cultural thing, and I think it's important to recognize that, I always ride this balance between, what I can live with and what's culturally, politically correct, I guess. Working hours is a good example. One of the social compliance, big social compliance standards is called SA 8000. In that, they dictate how many hours a worker can work every week, 48 hours, I think. But, in most cases in China, many cases, the workers are living in dormitories. And they're there to work and make as much money as they can. It's not like you're forcing them to work. In fact, what happens in those cases, you force them not to work. And so, so we kind of rely on our customers to tell us, how strict do you want to be? What's your standard that you want to follow? Because I can make a case, obvious things, work safety and so forth you can't debate that.
Mm-hmm.
But something like working hours but that's a big standard for a lot of people. So we, like I said, we kind of rely on our customers to tell us, and imagine, go back, I guess, 50 years and think about the American Industrial Revolution. We had kids working in factories. We had people working 24 hours a day or 20 hours a day because they wanted to. So for me personally, as long as people are not forced to do something they don't want to do, I don't have a big problem with it. But we do rely on our customers to tell us. Yeah.
Another question, how do you and the managers resolve conflicts? Say a manager really wanted to start bringing production instead of China to a higher cost facility in New Mexico for making widget A. But the remaining managing partners chose not to, they didn't want that. How do you all resolve those kinds of conflicts at an organizational level? Do you, democracy, is it founding partner overrules?
No, we separate we don't cross paths like that. We kind of each have different functions. So I'm on the operations side, one partner's on the sales side, one partner's on the finance side. So there's never, but partnerships are hard. There are days when, I want this factory paid, but the finance guy says, no, we only have enough money to pay this factory. So, or this guy's first, or that guy's first, or, So there's, when the sales guy's out on the golf course and he didn't make a sale that day, you start to question whether he should be writing off that golf course time, even though from a sales standpoint, he says that's important, So, but we pretty much let each other do their thing, and fortunately, when you, as long as you don't have financial difficulties, those kind of questions are less important. When it really comes to a head is when you have financial problems.
I think that's everything from my perspective. I'd like to open it up to the class. Who? Yes.
I was kind of wondering about hiring in the United States. You said a lot of your engineers are from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to actually hiring those people, do you need to find people that already speak Chinese? Or do you offer some kind of training, and does that affect your diversity?
No, in fact, none of our engineers American engineers speak Chinese. They, of course, if they did, that would be a plus. But all of our Chinese employees speak English, so it's it maybe not totally fluent, but we all of our managers there are very fluent bilingual, and so it's not, and all of our documents are bilingual, so it's not, language is not a deciding factor.
Do you find it easy to find bilingual managers in other countries?
Yes. Yes, in China, most college-educated people are bi or trilingual.
So do you all not have to do much, I don't know, you wouldn't have to pay for them to learn how to speak English, most of them just come to you already knowing, so you don't know to afford that training,
Yeah. It's very common to speak English there. They have they'll have a grade of level 2, 4, 6, and 8, and they have to do level 6 for us. They're higher to speak that.
On that thought, do you think that'll ever shift? Because English is the prominent language now, so everybody learns English. But do you think that'll ever shift to another language? Because there'll be more people speak Chinese.
I'd suggest you learn Chinese.
Okay.
Chinese is going to become more important in the future, and it's frankly it's not as hard a language as you might imagine. I mean, it's crazy to try to write it and read it, but to speak it, it's a pretty simple language.
So I guess I just don't know much about when ethical issues occur, but.
This is going to go up.
Oh, I know, I'm just
Words
curious.
are coming out of my mouth. I said.
No, I'm just curious, so, because you said that you all kind of let your customers just make those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So if something did arise, I'm not saying it's going to,
Mm-hmm.
but if something did arise, you all would not be the ones considered at fault. It would be the customer that hired you to do the job and told you all to do it a certain way?
That's really a legal question. I don't know the answer. We've not had that case, so I don't know. I mean, I would expect that we would have some responsibility. There's actually no laws that I'm aware of that say you can't make something wherever you want. It's really, outside of the U.S., you have to do what your heart tells you. And, if, like I said, there's a line between really unsafe conditions and a horrible workplace and somebody just working too many hours.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we don't have, it's a different culture. So, you hear these things about sweatshops, okay? What's a sweatshop? Well, maybe it's too hot. Well, maybe it's too hot for you, but for people in hot, humid countries, they're used to that. It doesn't feel like a sweatshop to them. It's just, if there's music playing, that's a benefit for them. They think that's great. They don't care that it's not air conditioned. They don't care that it's that they're working long hours. that's what they want to do. So it's a tough question, and it's a tough thing. You just have to, at the same time, customers, there's few customers that are willing to pay more to make their working conditions great, because there's few consumers that, even though you say you are, or you will, when you go to make that buying decision, most people are gonna, okay, if you had a sign on it that said this was made in a sweatshop, but you can buy it for $1, and this was made in a ISO 9000 facility and you have to pay $2. I'm telling you, from what I've seen, most people don't really think of it that much. They do when the media, but it's mostly exaggerated. And from what I've seen, the conditions are not, there are some bad conditions, don't get me wrong, I've seen some bad ones, but most of what I see is not, it lets me sleep pretty well at night. I'm not, so you just have to be careful whether you're putting your values on somebody else. Is that right or not? I don't know.
Well, so it sounded like you guys have this organizational structure that you found to be really successful. So you don't really see any need to reinvent the wheel anywhere? Is that kind of?
Oh, we're always reinventing.
Oh, can you describe something?
Well,
that a bit?
okay, so our process is always, any person in our organization can suggest a change in the process. And then we go through a review of, is it a good practice? Does it make business sense? Is it going to cause some other domino effect that would, cause some other problem? And then we reward people when they come up with good, innovative ideas. So we're always, but when we do adopt a change and we make a change, then everybody has to do it that way. So you can't just make a change for yourself. It has to be company-wide, because we want everybody to follow the same system. And that's really, I think, because it's so important there because of the culture. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just, but yeah, we really want to change and always invite change. And we change around not only the processes, but also the way we report. We've had several, we have 3 basic positions there. One is the factory inspector, one is the engineer that's in the China engineer, and one is the, we call the product specialist, is like a business manager. And so we've had different ways of reporting. Currently, we have the inspector reporting to the engineer. In the past, we had all the inspectors reporting to a quality manager. And so what that did was kind of flatten the organization a bit, so that it breaks it down more into a business team, so that they're more able to control their customers and their products. Georgia?
I'm trying to understand exactly what your company does, because you mentioned a couple of things,
Okay.
and I'm a supply chain person as well. You mentioned, the clothespins and the complex computerized equipment stuff, and that you sell your skills to other companies. So do you have like multiple projects going on at the same time, and when the project ends and you start a different project? I mean, I'm thinking equipment, inventory leftover, switching out systems. How does that work?
Well, it's different for different customers. Some customers are, you tool it, you make it once, and you never make it again. You just have to build it into the price. Other customers, you tool it and you make it every day for the next 20 years, hopefully. I mean, that's the manufacturing dream, is one color, one size, you know, you just make it every day, you know. And you're right, exactly, so Model T kind of thing. So we make folding chairs as one of our big items. Our original customer was Costco up in Columbus, Indiana. And so we're still producing about 10,000 folding chairs a day. That's a beautiful project. But then we have, you know, we have other customers which it's a more of a seasonal product, where they'll just make it one time, and then it's for one season, one promotion or whatever. And then we make a lot of point of purchase displays, for example, for the retail industry. And those are one-time purchase. You know, some shoe brand is doing a promotion of shoes and they need, you know, a rack for every store that they're in. We make them all one time and then it's done. So, but you just have to plan it into it makes it complex. But that's also one of the reasons why we have this universal process is by the planning process, you can build that into the project. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I'm just trying to envision your manufacturing space must be.
No, we do contract manufacturing. We don't have.
So you go out and find people.
That's correct.
To
Yes.
make this widget for
That's correct.
this
Yes.
company, you're middleman.
We're in probably we have like probably 50 core factories we do business in, and probably another 50 you know, that we just do business in sometimes.
So supply chain / broker kind of middleman, get it for you.
Well, you could call it that, yeah, yeah. I mean, supply chain, you know, I think honestly, your definition, it depends on what your definition of supply chain is. For me, supply chain is managing the supply. And whether you're making it in your own facility or making it in another facility, it's the same thing, basically.
Okay.
And I think that wraps it up, sorry.
So basically,
we're
I'd-
running out of time.
Oh, good question.
Do you have time for one more, Jim?
Yeah, I got plenty of time.
Okay, last question, Jonathan.
Okay, so basically, the products you make, are they strictly metal-based, or is this just anything and everything that you can find a factory to make?
It's not that broad, but it's almost that broad.
Almost that broad.
We got into the businesses we're in because somebody came and said, look, I need help making these. I don't want to do it myself. I don't want to send my people over there. Help us do it. Or they did it and they had problems doing it. And then they said, okay, it's your problem. But, so we focus on metal products, plastic products, textile products. We do a lot of sewing. And then those are our top three. We also are into wood, glass, ceramics are probably the next three. So it's pretty concentrated.
Okay, so when you say you employ like these Chinese, all these, I mean, they're not really your employees in a sense because you're going out to these other factories and these other factories are.
But they work for us, but not the people making the products. These are product managers, engineers,
well, so these are just the management of the companies that go in there.
Correct.
Okay, so they don't actually make any product.
No.
All they do is
They
just manage to
oversee
make sure it's done
oversee
right.
the process and make sure it gets made right. Just like if you're running your own factory, you're going to have your own buyer, materials buyer, or your own inspectors. So we're like a third party that goes in and manages the contract manufacturer.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you.